It says it's live streaming now.
Yep. Just got to get it across to the website.
Yeah, it looks like it's appeared on YouTube now.
Yep.
So you happy, Stephen? We'll go.
Just give us another half a minute.
Cool.
We're up on YouTube, so I think you're good to go. It'll come up on the council website shortly, so good to go.
Great. Well, kia ora koutou, everyone. Welcome along to our first formal meeting, the Selwyn District Council, 9th of February 2022. Not the first time that we've met together. And unfortunately, since the last time we were able to meet together less formally, COVID has changed things again for us, and we're meeting online today and for the foreseeable future until things with Omicron change. So thanks for the flexibility shown and being able to do this. I think it's really important for the leadership of our council where we're encouraging staff to work from home as much as possible to ensure that we can continue to provide services to our community and not have more of the organisation shut down than needs to be. That where we can work from home, we do that as well, and hence being able to have this meeting online, not to mention all the staff support that's often required in a meeting would prove difficult in a work from home situation for staff. So I'll just open with the karakia and our affirmation. Whakatake te hau ki te uru, whakatake te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, ihi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. In the council affirmation, let us affirm today that we as councillors will work together to serve the citizens of Selwyn District, to always use our gifts of understanding, courage, common sense, wisdom and integrity in all our discussions, dealings and decisions so that we may solve problems effectively. May we always recognise each other's values and opinions, be fair-minded and ready to listen to each other's point of view. In our dealings with each other, let us always be open to the truth of others and ready to seek agreement, slow to take offence and always prepared to forgive. May we always work to enhance the well-being of Selwyn District and its communities. We will.
We will.
So the agenda today has been circulated. I believe that we're all here. David, have you done a count up of everyone? I had a look before and I think we're all present and accounted for.
Yeah, everyone appears present, Mr. Mayor.
So no apologies. I've had no identification of any extraordinary business. David, are you aware of any?
No, nothing received by staff, Mr. Mayor.
Great, and no conflicts of interest other than those that are already recorded in the conflicts register.
Correct.
Public forum, we have Heather Morton joining us, and Heather, I don't know if you're online yet. Therese has just messaged to say that although it was tested this morning, they're just having a wee bit of difficulty.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
just while we're talking about conflicts of interest, I'm wondering if those of us who are district plan hearing commissioners should not take place in the debate on the plan change that's on the agenda, because the same issues are in front of us as district plan hearings.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Mark. And we've got a quorum without you taking part in that part of the meeting, so that makes sense. Thank you.
The four of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Therese, can you confirm whether Heather is with us?
Mr. Mayor, not at the minute. I've just given her a call and they're trying to zoom in, so I will let you know as soon as she's online. Thank Thank you.
Okay, so we'll come back to that item once Heather's able to join us properly. I guess the other thing for today is thinking about our own etiquette online, and it's much easier to manage a meeting if we use the reactions that Zoom provides us with. So raise your hand if you want to speak. If you can mute yourself if you're not speaking, just so we don't get any background noise, or if you get surprised by kids or other things bumping into you. And we'll try and just keep our conversations to once around the room and speaking once to each agenda item, just so that we can flow through the matters that are before us today. So confirmation of minutes then. Would someone like to move and second that those minutes be true and accurate? Mark and Sophie. Is there any comments on those? Jeff, do you have a comment on that you'd like to make on the minutes?
No, I don't. I just raised a hand, but I'll have to work out how to get it down there.
If you click reactions again, Jeff, and then you can just click lower hand, that will lower it.
Okay, got it.
Great. That takes us on. I moved and seconded, sorry, Mark and Sophie. There was no discussion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And anyone against, raise your hands. We'll speak up. There's no one, so that's carried. The next item is on page 10, and it's my report. Just highlighting some of the things that we're getting into this year, starting with picking up what we left behind last year, which was we've still got a COVID situation in the country and for our community, which casts a pretty long cloud over lots of the decisions that are going on at the moment. But knowing that we sit in a space of reform and change, and that this year we're going to have quite a lot of extra demands placed on us on top of the business as usual work that councils get up to. Was really pleased to have the time together a week or 2 weeks ago now to help confirm with councillors the work program that we have ahead, to get together with one another and connect again, and then to look at a few of the responsibilities that we would take on to see us through the next 6 or 8 months to the next election, recognising that because of the breadth of things that we have now, actually having a couple of people involved in those will actually strengthen all of our council and our council response to those things. One of the key bits that have been discussed and is a piece of reform for us is the future for local government. And there's some work that's been going on that I've undertaken as part of my Friend of the Panel review. And I'm just going to share the outcome of that with you now. I've emailed this to everyone and it's been shared yesterday with the sector, and so you may have received it via LGNZ as well. So this is, hopefully you can see it. It's meant to be an A3 folded piece of paper. So actually we're looking at the right-hand side is page 1, and on the left-hand side of this page is the back of the document. But thinking through what's the hope for local government, and at the moment we are on a trajectory that says in 3 to 6 years local government will cease to exist, and the way that we currently know it, with water moving. I think it's very easy to see other conversations around transport with the RMA changes that are ahead of us. The way that government in New Zealand functions is changing. That doesn't mean that Selwyn district disappears. It just means that council and council structures are in for some significant change. And I think if we reflect over the mood of the nation, thinking about the way that more and more things have been centralised, there's a desire to see much more local empowerment and decision making around services delivered locally, and not just leaving that up to Wellington. So this document is a way of starting to ask some questions and generate thought. It's not a roadmap. It's not trying to answer everything. It's trying to say there's some big questions that we need to start thinking about. What is it that we want to land as a sector, and overall an empowered and integrated public service? And I think it's a brand new public service for New Zealand is what's going to be required. LGNZ has launched into I think 5 webinars. The first one was Friday last week, each Friday, and hopefully you have those in your diaries and are able to attend and be a part of that discussion. But we need to make sure that we lead the conversation and don't just leave it to the panel, or leave it to the minister or leave it to LG&Z, but that individually we start to take some responsibility for what the future of local government might look like. So I'm really keen to leverage my role as a friend of the panel and push this as far as we can. And tomorrow I'll be talking to the Tai Tuara board, which is used to be the Society of Local Government Managers, which David and our staff will be a part of, to talk through how we might do a lot of this work together rather than separating out who works in local government. If we are thinking about a future public service for New Zealand, then there's things that the government is going to have to give up and change. And I think that they need to we need to start thinking about what that looks like. Is it something for our island? Is it something for multiple regions? Is it something for a takiwa? Is it something for a region? Is it something for a sub-region? And that answer will look different depending on where you sit and where you are in the country. And I don't think, again, one answer, just saying a regional size, that isn't going to work everywhere, and it might not work anywhere. So we need to have discussions about what sized entities are actually going to be sustainable going forward. We also need to think about how we have community voice and how we continue to hear from communities. And is our current community board size the right sort of size to be able to do that? Or is that too big, or is that too small? And the trouble is, when you say regional, at the moment we've got regional councils and everyone thinks regional council. Certainly don't mean that. There's lots of changes that need to happen in that regional space. And when you say community board, that already has connotations for people because we have community boards. So not thinking about them as entities as they currently exist, but as size entities that are able to better serve communities. And we need to see housing, education, health, welfare, and those things that central government currently deploys centrally actually devolved down to those multi-region entities for greater decision making and governance at that level. And from what I've seen in the regional leadership group, which has been leading the COVID response, the multi-agency approach from government feels very disjointed, lacks clarity, has multiple lines of duplication, and isn't as efficient as it could be. And so at the moment, central government collects 90% of all public revenue. Local government collects under 10%. It might actually be 92 to 8. So actually finding a 10% improvement in the way that costs are currently spent within the public service could mean that we could do a whole lot better of the same things locally for less. We could get rid of the rate system and think about how the current tax system actually supports all government in New Zealand. And so there's some big conversations in that needs to be taking place. The things that I think are right in front of us too, I'll just show you the second page that sits here as well. So these are some of the building blocks that need to be a part of the discussion. So, some agreed wellbeing outcomes for each rohi or region or sub-region or whatever size we want to say that. Some high quality local leadership and governance. And it's been interesting talking to other councils and mayors and CEs just about the different level of working together that there is and the different levels of respect that there is between elected members and officials and councils around the place. We need locally determined and empowered delivery, and I think that's where we need to think about many of the government's current roles being performed locally. There's going to be lots of things the government needs to continue with, and setting bottom lines and setting climate change direction and understanding their international relationships. But I think there's a whole lot of the development and delivery that can be done regionally-ish, I'll just use that word. And to do that, though, it's going to require working together and thinking about some agreed wellbeing outcomes. Local involvement in central decisions. So I think that there needs to be a way where currently we've got a system, the central government thinks for the nation and acts for the nation. We need a system where we could act nationally, but think locally. And so actually having a house of mayors or iwi chairs, people that are going to be in a space to think about how does this actually work locally? Every piece of legislation that runs through Parliament, how does this work in a local space, and not just leaving the government to think about what it wants to achieve, but how does it play out? And I think just a local government impact statement doesn't quite go far enough. So a house of mayors, for a better, there'll be other terms and use, but I think we should think about those things that look a bit different from what we've currently got going on. And I think there's an opportunity at the moment for us to think, even within the Greater Christchurch Partnership in our sub-region, what are some of the things that we could improve and do better, rather than allowing change to either happen to us or for others to point the finger at what we're not doing well. And the idea of Greater Christchurch transport being something that I think at the moment we've got this is what we're doing, add it to the pie, this is what you're doing, add that to the pie. And if we were to take a much more sub-regional approach to what's going to be of benefit to the sub-region, we might find that we could have some better outcomes, employ some different expertise, and maximise the great staff that we've currently got within our organisation. So there's plenty of conversations to be had going forward, and if these sorts of things excite you or you enjoy them, then yeah, encourage you to get involved and continue to talk about them as they happen. I'm now trying to get out of my screen sharing and get back to the meeting, and it's not happening for me, sorry. But I can see Mark's got a question, and then Sophie.
Thank you. My question was your local government's oral submission. How did that go, and how was that received? Were they actually listening this time?
A submission on Paiora on the health bill, Mark?
Yes.
If that's what you're meaning, yeah, I presented both the local government New Zealand's submission to the Select Committee and the Canterbury Mayoral Forum submission to the Select Committee, both focused on the location plans and thinking about how it's all very well thinking about how we do things better together, but actually if you can't figure out how it's going to land on the ground and what a locality actually looks like, then it can be quite meaningless and intangible for a community. So the focus was on, if we're going to come up with locality plans, don't draw new lines. We've already got some existing boundaries. We understand where TAs currently sit. We've got great relationships currently, so don't try and split us up or make things different. And the locality plans clearly need to link into the overall work of the health space and not just leave Wellington or the other to do that work. Actually, the locality plans are hugely important to that. I hope that answers that, Mark. Sophie.
Kia ora koutou. Good to see you all. Hey, so my comment is more your written report that's in the agenda, Sam. It mentions Te Rohotu Whio School, but it's written as Tohutu, which isn't a word. As far as I'm aware, the Rohotu, it's named after a particular plant, as you know. So if that could be fixed, that would be great, because it's currently not the name of the school there. Cheers.
Thank you. We'll change that. And the opening didn't happen as due to COVID. So at the moment, there's only kids and things in the school. So I didn't actually attend anything at the school yet, but there will be an opportunity for that going forward. And I'll include the A3 folder that I've circulated to councillors on the council agenda minutes of this meeting, so that it's there for the record as well. Any further questions that people have? Shane?
Ngā mihi o te tauhou, Sam, kai mahi o Kaikunihira o Waikirikiri. Kia ora, welcome back everybody. Thanks very much, Sam. Just in relation to your the slide that you put up before, point 6 in the actions that we're taking speaks to the upcoming elections in 22 and driving voter turnout, and also Māori participation and leadership values and that sort of thing. Out of the entirety of that spreadsheet that you put up there, what are some of the specific areas that you think will be very beneficial to Selwyn? And I'm really interested in what sort of drive we can put behind the elections coming up in October to get more people to stand and be participating in the local council.
Great. As far as the elections go, I'll probably get David to talk about that in his next in his report. There's an elections 22 piece, which is a drive that Local Government New Zealand has put together. I think looks really good and smart, and is about encouraging people to stand and then participate in local government. And it's kind of asking questions, you know, what would you stand for? You know, what are the things that actually get you either annoyed or excited about in your community? And I think those are the types of things, those are the types of questions we should ask people, not just those that already self-identify. So there's a few groups that I think need to be in there. I think as far as the changes go, the biggest change is going to be in a more efficient, less siloed locally responsive system that can deliver the types of things that New Zealand Aotearoa is going to need going forward. And at the moment, just making sure that happens more and more in Wellington, which is the push at the moment, that's actually not going to deliver the long-term outcomes New Zealand needs, because it forgets about the small person, it doesn't know about small towns, it doesn't quite connect with where each locality is. And so I think a bigger push, and I mean, small towns currently probably think that we don't as council already, so if you then add that to the South Island, add that to New Zealand, all of a sudden, there's a whole nother disconnect from where people actually are and what the issues that they face are and what the support and help that they might need. So I think that the biggest thing that could happen is a rejig of government for New Zealand. So that includes local and central government. There's no point in having this conversation just for local government. That's tweaking around the edge with the 8%. We need to talk about the 100% and how New Zealand has a better system that's going to sort us going forward. I'm happy to move my report then. So a seconder for that, Shane? Great, thanks mate. And any other questions? All those in favour, please raise your hands. And anyone against, speak up now. Declare it carried. And the next item is the Chief Executive's report. And David, as part of this report, do you just want to touch on elections 22? Sorry that it'll just be on the fly with what you can remember off the top of your head, but just covering off on that work, which I think was probably quite helpful.
Yeah, and it's quite timely that we do start talking about this early in the year. So often, through you, Mr. Chair, in response to Shane's questions, my experience is that levels of engagement are often depending on what are the key issues, number of candidates, even in some areas if there's a mayoral election or not, often dictates the outcome. I, as CE, have statutory obligations where I have to encourage communities and people within communities to show interest in candidacy. And one of the things that I'll be doing starting late June, early July, as I've done the last 2 elections, is to hold meetings around the district, inviting people who may be interested, firstly to let them understand what local authorities are all around, time commitments, remuneration, exposure to particular issues, and most importantly, the benefit that service gives back to the community. So I'll be working through those, and we're actually working up the slides literally at the moment doing that. So yeah, that's where we are. The report, I will take the report on page 14 as read. Mr. Mayor, councillors will be familiar with the process where this matter was introduced during our strategy day. We sought comments from councillors, received a number of responses which were incorporated into the final submission. So this is here just to acknowledge that retrospectively approving the sending of this submission for the Ngāi Tahu representation.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for the conversation that needed to be had, sort of quite short timeframes to make this happen. It was great to get the submission sent through, and I know others of you may have given your own individual submission to the process well. For me, it's just putting back in what was working back in 2010 through 2019. I was quite surprised that it was taken away, and having iwi partners at the table through decision making gets a lot of, or irons out a whole lot of the things that could end up being issues later at the very beginning of the process, which means you don't create the issues further down. And if I think back to our own experience through the district plan committee, where we had 2 Runanga representatives with full voting rights through that process, it meant we came up with a robust plan that they were fully engaged and aware of, had involvement in the development of, and we did not receive any objections to the things that were put forward in that plan. So a more efficient way of doing things, it speeds up the process, it's lowered the cost, and I think it's actually upholding our te tiriti expectations that we should have on ourselves of working in collaboration with mana whenua and making these decisions. So yeah, I'll move that this is accepted. Mark.
Yeah, I'm very happy to second it. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. When I was on the GCP with appointed iwi representatives, I found that they assisted the process, didn't impede it. And I think that anybody in the public who fears this is simply wrong. This will improve ECAN's operation and therefore benefit the whole of the region.
Thanks, Mark. Shane.
Oh, sorry about that. It's taken a long time for me to. I'm off. Kia ora. Thanks very much, Sam. I think quite good timing considering it's the commemoration of the 182 years of the signing of the Tiriti o Waitangi this week or last Sunday. And I am happy to support this letter, the submission going forward. I believe it's at the select committee stage, at the stage through Parliament, and through robust discussion at our hui last couple of weeks ago. I gather there's support for this to move through. I think it's pertinent on councillors to reflect on, I guess, Waitangi, the treaty, the signing of the treaty and the purpose of it at this point. And I think this shows solidarity between us, that the partnership will continue and we'll have got a lot to benefit from. Specifically to point 8, Te Taumo Te Runanga have advised that they look to support the views of Mātā Waka to our council, or Mātā Waka being all Māori that are from, not from here, but are from everywhere else, living within the rohe. While I do support that, it's 100% council's responsibility as a Crown agent to support the views of Mātā Waka living in their rohe or ngā hui whā. So along with this submission, and I know it's in our policy somewhere, I think solidarity between councillors to accept responsibility for all Māori living within the district has to be a part of that as well. So whether it needs to be emotional, whether it's something that's brought up at a later date, I believe the support from Mātā Waka is secondary to the council's obligations, and we reviewed that when we went through the representation review. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Shane. Thank you for that. Any further comments? All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, speak up now. Declare it carried. And just check to see whether Heather's on board.
Not yet, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll come back to that. We have the district licensing updates, and Malcolm Johnson, I saw you online. Yep, Malcolm, I hand the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just take my reports as read. I can say that over the Christmas New Year period, it was very quiet. The police were very happy. Probably too quiet from my monitoring that I've done over the last few weeks. Businesses are really hurting quite a lot. So, yeah, we'll have to try and hope for a quick end to what's happening around COVID. So, yeah, watch this space, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Mark.
Thank you. Malcolm, has there been an application for a licence for the Kuwi Tavern? I understand the rebuild's either started or about to start for Kuwi. I just don't know where that licensing was. And what's the situation with Springfield, or no, Sheffield, given the fire?
Yeah, so the Sheffield, we'll start on Sheffield first. That's going to be work in progress. The owner is potentially looking to sell the property. So we'll have to work out what's going to happen from there. But I think that's going to be a long way off in relation to Kuwi Tavern. We haven't, I understand the building's about to commence, but we have not yet received an application for a licence from there. So as soon as we do, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Sophie.
Kia ora, Malcolm, good to see you. Thanks for the notes in your report about BYO events, because that's an interesting one people often ask about, and it's yeah, it's handy from a personal point of view if you just want to hire a room and bring your own beers, but obviously has issues for you guys. And yeah, just noting as well, I believe Lincoln Uni's O Week parties have all been cancelled, apart from a few smaller ones being held at different venues because obviously COVID. So at least that'll keep you, less work for you and less work for the noise complaint guys.
Yeah, there was a lot of complaints last year.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, you had your hand up. Nope.
Sorry, Sam. As
slip of the finger, and I'm trying to rectify my IT is not working as well as I would hope. Thank you.
No worries, Grant. So we've got a recommendation in front of us that we received the report. Mover and seconder, Jeff and Bob. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, speak up now. Declare it carried. And Heather, are you online with us? Is that on Liz's phone at the moment?
Sam, they've done a message that they can't hear the audio.
Okay, I haven't. Yeah, I can't. We can't change it here, so hopefully they're able to change it. We'll just move on to the next item. Heather, if you can hear us, we'll just keep moving through the items on our agenda and come to you once you can have your audio working well. So the next item for us is Community Services and Facilities Group Update. Denise, Malcolm, sorry.
Yeah, excuse me, Sam. I've got some device issues here. I'm going to have to swap devices, so I'll be going offline for a minute. So excuse me.
Okay, no worries. Denise, back to you.
Kia ora koutou. The report in front of you is for your information only, and it covers the period up until the end of December by and large. One of the key milestones that took place over the period was the season of tours that culminated in the opening of Te Ara Aotea. And I've asked Nikki Moen, who's the Arts, Culture and Lifelong Learning Manager, to speak to a couple of highlights around this, and also to give you a bit of an update in terms of some slight adjustments to the opening hours of libraries under the red environment. But before I hand over to Nikki, just to draw your attention to the fact that we do have a KPI related to the From the Land website, and up until December, January, we have had 15,000 more viewers than this time last year, and a total of 60,000 page visits and 18,000 site visits. So that's progressing well. And also another highlight from the report is that we have had a campaign going online around promoting careers in local government, but particularly targeting Selwyn young people. And we drew on staff from right across the organisation and uploaded their videos, and we had more than 39,500 people viewing those videos. So we were really pleased with the pickup in that regard. But at this point, I'll hand across to Nikki to say a few words about some highlights.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just going to have to turn my video off because my screen is going strangely. Thank you, Denise. I wanted to say that Te Ara Aotea is going wonderfully, and I wanted to thank you for your support in making this happen. The staff are really appreciative when they see you in the building, enjoying the facilities and integrating with our customers and with them. You will possibly be aware that we have a high number of new customers, which is exactly what I had hoped would happen with the opening of Te Ara Aotea. And this popularity means that our other facilities are growing in popularity as well. As Denise said, the Seasons of Tours, which was part of the official opening, was a bizarre but quite wonderful week, something quite unexpected, where we had to deliver a number of formal events to involve so many people in the official opening celebrations across the week. It was lovely to know that we involved about 650 different people in the celebration of the opening of Te Ara Aotea, even though we couldn't have that planned weekend event that we dreamt of. as you can see from Denise's report, we've seen an outstanding growth in all aspects of the youth of Te Ara Atea compared to Rolleston Library, and this is still remaining high, and I expect that we'll continue to see another few months of settling in and growth now, particularly as the community facilities have been booked by community groups as well. We'll see more evening activity. During orange and now in red, we have, unusually compared to the rest of the country, managed to continue to deliver a nicely active programming offering throughout the district. It has meant that we have had to place extra resource in our programs, checking COVID passes, setting up and cleaning, but we are really delighted to be able to pretty much deliver business as usual. This includes the Edge Connector vehicle is still pushing its way last week to Arthur's Pass, Glen Tunnel and Rakaia. This week it's at Sheffield, Springfield and Castle Hill. In the main, Jade, the captain of the ECV, says we're not turning any customers away. Everyone seems to have their vaccination passes and are treating us really well. So that's really pleasing to know that we could continue with that service. Red traffic light has actually allowed us to activate our programs in the libraries, and they are popular, and our customers are grateful that we're providing those programs. We do need additional staff members for the programs and also for the pass checking on the doors, particularly at Te Ara Atea. You will have had your pass checked as you visited that facility. I'm noticing that our click and collect service is starting to ramp up again. I think that's as people might be starting to hunker down. So you can either contact us through the website or by phone, and we organise for a bag of books for you, either to be picked up or on occasions we'll actually deliver them as the ECV is passing. So I'm thrilled that we're doing that and to see that we're growing that service. In the light of all of this, we've had to look at our staffing capacity so that we can retain a satisfactory level of service provision and program delivery right across the whole network, right up to Arthur's Pass. And it has been identified that the weekday visitor levels in the afternoons and early evenings at Darfield and Leaston are light, even though we've tried hard to activate that 5 to 6 hour. And in the light of that, during the red light period of COVID, we are going to shut those two sites on weekdays at 5 p.m. rather than 6 p.m. That allows us to redistribute resource so that we can continue with our quality program and service delivery, and also with the important job of checking the vaccination passes. At this stage, there is no change proposed during red light for Saturday opening at Darfield and Leaston, so that will give our commuter populations, our workers, an opportunity to use their service when they're at home. So they are the main things that I wanted to talk to you about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, for that. Denise, is there further things you'd like to touch on?
No, that concludes the report tabling. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions that councillors have of that report? Shane.
Sorry, I was yeah, just well done, Denise and the team. Huge effort and a massive task in front of you. So I just wanted to really congratulate you. A couple of the highlights of me was the Hear Me, See Me, Te Puna Waia Te Hinepo exhibition and discussion. That was amazing. Some of our young people and residents exhibiting their art at Te Ara Atea, the continued usage of it, and just the amount of professionals that continue to use the offices as well as hot desks. And I'm one of those. It's just so handy in the middle of things to drop in host meetings and use the Wi-Fi. So yeah, fantastic facility, well utilized, and great job at managing the operations of it, and just looking at the operations. I think supporting Nikki in her decisions, or collectively the decisions to look at the operational functions and where we can save on that, because it's obviously a big area of costs that's passing back on. And also just one other highlight was the Niku Cuddle Huts, the Leaston Community Centre, where they were making fabric cuddle huts as a group, and they go far and wide out into the world. So fantastic that we can be a part of that. Thanks very much. Kia ora.
Thank you for that, Shane. Nicole?
Thanks for the report, Nikki. And I can testify from my own family that we used to be big users of the Rolleston Library, and the last few years we've hardly been in at all. And definitely, as you will have seen, that been into Te Aroha quite a few times. It's a fantastic facility, and it's so good to see how the staff have fitted into the place and made everyone welcome. With just going forward with, obviously, with residents who don't have vaccine passes, so we've got the click and collect, and are they able to get things from the ECV vehicle if it's outside as opposed to being inside? The activities that you've talked about, the programs would be inside a building, I would think, but are you able to clarify that?
I can talk to that, Denise, if that's okay. Not with the ECV at the moment. We've just been delivering the service to those with vaccination passes, except children, because we can help children. So I'm aware in the libraries and possibly in the ECV, neighbours and other family members have been bringing children to the library, and sometimes the staff members have been helping children as well. So I'm really thrilled about that. We're keeping an eye on that still at the moment, but at the moment there don't seem to be too many problems.
Thank you.
And Mark?
Thank you. While we were talking about reviewing library hours, did the unprecedented demand on Boxing Day and Christmas Day suggest that we should review those hours as well?
That's a lovely question. Thank you for answering. For those of you who aren't aware, we did have managed to have some visitors within Te Aroha on those public holidays, unbeknown to us. It was the way the security doors had been set. The lovely thing was we've got great security in there. In Denmark, they do open access libraries, and it was something that I'd always talked to the project team about. So what Luke and I said the other day was, well, we're well on the way to planning for that. There was no incident. It was lovely. All of our exhibition cases are well secured. So deep breath and all was good. Some people borrowed books too, Councillor Alexander. They didn't just go in there for a sit down.
Yeah, I understand that. I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised, that they were not only in the library, but they actually used the self-service borrowing and checked out their books as well. I thought that was great, and perhaps an example we should take into mind.
Yes.
Thanks for that, Mark. Jeff?
Yeah, Nikki and Denise, when we built the library and we admired the finished physical presence of it, that was really a success story, I think, for Selwyn and the council and the whole district of Selwyn. But now it's up to you people and to make it work. And the feedback that I'm getting from the community, and that's generally a community that wouldn't use libraries, is that a lot of people who've not been into libraries actually for many years are starting to use it. And I've had nothing but really good reports, particularly from some of the young mothers, and that was young children, where they can go into the library and they don't feel inhibited. It's a friendly atmosphere where they feel their children can enjoy the atmosphere. And for that reason, and also I've two young people who are dyslexic that I know quite well, have been going to the library and getting books as well, because they don't feel that they can't be part of the library. And that's a huge congratulations from me for both of you and all of your staff. And I really do mean that. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Bland, and I will pass that on to our team this afternoon. They'll really appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for all those questions and for the report. It's great to hear what's been going on. There's mover and seconder for this report. Mark and Sophie, all those in favour, please raise your hands. And anyone against, please speak up now. Declare it carried. We're still struggling with sound for Heather to be able to present, and Stephen and Naomi and Therese are doing what they can to try and link that in. So we will come to that when we get that audio sorted. So we'll just continue on through our agenda, which now is Prebleton Water Treatment Facility, Notice of Requirement. It's on page 44 of today's agenda. And Robert Love is in the meeting to address the matter. Robert.
Afternoon, all councillors. Take the report as read, but if there are any questions, happy to take them. And I believe Murray England's also online as well to answer those technical questions if you had any.
Happy to move it, Sam.
Right, move it. And Grant, you got a question?
Sorry, Sam. Councillor Laurel gazumped me by jumping in above my hand, so I'll have to second it now.
Yeah,
not obeying the protocol, meeting protocol, Councillor Laurel, apparently. I feel for Miss Morton, who's been diligently trying to get on, so I'm quite disappointed for her that she's unable to present. But now, good common sense use of existing land. I'm guessing wanting to understand there's 2 wells to be drilled there. Do we have consents to those wells, or are we going to transfer existing consents to those new wells? Is that able to be answered today?
Murray, you might be able to answer that for us.
Yep, happy to answer that question. So the water will be transferred from existing consents to those 2 new wells.
Great, thanks, Murray. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Grant, for that. No further questions. We've had a move and a seconder. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And anyone against, speak up now. Declare it carried. The next item is on tab 12. It's private plan change, and it'll be noted that the commissioners for the district plan hearing will step back from taking part in discussion and decisions on this agenda item. It's a public meeting though, so you don't have to turn off and walk away and leave, but that will be noted for the minutes. We have Rachel Carruthers online to talk us through the report, and then we'll get to some questions. Rachel.
Good afternoon, councillors. Apologies if my sound is slightly dodgy. I'm outside the Health Hub meeting room where we've got Plan Change 71 currently in progress. So 67 is an extension of the Willfield subdivision at West Melton. You'll see that the ODP makes reference to a combination of medium density and low density. That's medium and low density in the context of living West Melton, not what we would normally think of as medium and low density. So for medium density, you're looking at sort of 1,000 through to 3,000 square metres, and low density from 3,000 to 5,000 square metres. Other than that, I'm happy to take the report as read unless anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions from councillors? Grant.
Thank you, Sam. Page 85, number 101, concerned me, Mr. Talentire's evidence around that we are at or near capacity and don't have our consent is up to 47,777, and we have no application to increase that. Are we able to comment on that? Because that to me sounded unbelievable to hear that in writing, and it wasn't refuted in the document. Is that able to be discussed today, or is there some feedback from you on that one, Rachel?
That's in relation to the Pines
yep. Capacity to take this subdivision. The evidence given was that I know we've infrastructure-wise we're working hard, but this is the consent, which is pretty important.
That's the stuff that Mr. England is working on with the Pines 120 project at the minute. There and the technical advice that the Commissioner received, that there is sufficient capacity that we can make it work.
Second question is that Commissioner discussed public transport and the ability to connect, and said largely, although it wasn't really intensive but highly intense, he felt that public transport needs to have been addressed. My concern is, and it's not just related to this subdivision, but all our new subdivisions that seem to be putting in, is that there doesn't appear to be, outwardly anyway, and maybe at a granular level there is, any provision for bus stops within the new subdivisions. And I know one of the biggest bugbears for people who buy houses is suddenly find they've got a bus stop outside their house. So if they were able to have the bus stops clearly noted where they were likely to go in these new subdivisions at this stage, it would be highly desirable in my view.
Yeah, the location of bus stops is something that's addressed through the roading design at the subdivision stage. It's not a matter for the plan change.
So we are likely to see designated bus stops within this provision with bays and things when it gets to that granular level.
It's possible that we would see that kind of thing integrated into the subdivision design. Remembering, of course, that it's not this council's call to provide or not provide buses. And we're still talking a very low density of population as to therefore whether Environment Canterbury would consider it worthwhile running buses.
All right. Can I continue, Sam, in this vein?
Yeah, carry on.
It does really concern me that there's sort of this disconnect here. We were saying it's ECAN's problem and not ours, but we're in charge of consenting the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure that's going to go in the ground. And without building the infrastructure in the appropriate place in the right scale and size, how are we ever going to encourage this to happen in the future? And we've seen in other places, particularly in my tenure on the council, people who have found they've got a bus stop outside the house have been vehemently opposed, and we've had quite heated council meetings where they've wanted bus stops moved or not be there at all. So clearly I would have thought at the infrastructure stage, this is really the time where those places should be clearly identified and marked on maps, whether it's by us or in conjunction with ECAN. It doesn't say the bus is coming next year, but it could be 5 years away, but at least we've got the infrastructure in place.
Sure, but that is something that would be more appropriately addressed at subdivision, not at the plan change, because at the plan change, it's just the generic, we need the really important roads in these places to get the connections in. It's nowhere near as finely grained as that sort of really important stuff.
Yeah, appreciate that, Rachel. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grant, for those questions, and I think that raises the continued conversation that needs to be had around Greater Christchurch transport. And when you've got different entities responsible for different pieces of the planning and delivery of the transport functions, there can be some doubling up and things can easily be missed. So I think it's a conversation we need to have as a council with our counterparts going forward. Rachel, thank you for presenting that. And Nicole has asked that we just identify who the councillors are who aren't taking part in this, who are the district plan councillors. So that's Nicole, Malcolm, Deborah and Mark. I think it's the 4 of them. Is there someone there that I've missed that needs to be identified as having a conflict for this item? No, so that'll be noted. Sophie?
Kia ora, Rachel, good to see you. I'm happy to move this. I don't think anybody else has yet. But I just want to say it was really interesting reading the debates and the evidence around the MPS urban development that sort of played out here, because this is one of those sorts of little subdivisions that really doesn't add a great deal of capacity, but in terms of the township it does, but actually in terms of the targets that the new legislation is trying to achieve, it's kind of skirting around the edges a wee bit. So I guess in some ways it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. So that's more of a comment than any questions, because at the end of the day, we're kind of trying to filter these sorts of plan changes out. But at the moment, they still skirt in because of just, their situation. But yeah, thank you very much.
Moved by Sophie and a seconder. Jeff, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hands. All those against, speak up now. Declare it carried. The next, welcome back to the meeting, those councillors that have stepped away for that item. The next item is on tab 13, and it is the potential stock waterways closures for council deliberation, that we approve the closure of 6 lengths of waterways totaling 8 Ks. And Daniel Meehan is online. Daniel, I'll hand the floor to you.
Cool, thank you, Sam. This report is recommending the closure of of 6 sections of stock waterways. These sections went out for public consultation in December, and the period for feedback closed in the middle of January. We received 1 objection from these closures which went out for consultation, and recommendation is that there's a hearing panel formed to hear and consider that closure before it comes back to council, which is recommendations 2 and 3. We've also recommended the same hearing panel which has heard our previous hearing for stockwater race closures, which was the hearing held in December. It's worth noting that closure number 1, the Goulds to Rattletrack road closure, is part of the Farringdon Southwest development, which is one of the developments which has been fast-tracked under the government legislation, and this closure was identified during that fast-track consenting process. Appendix A on page 161 shows a table summarising these closures, and Appendix B on page 162 has specific details about each closure and includes maps. It's probably also worth just noting quickly about the hearing panel who heard the closures in December. So that was Councillor Deborah Hassan and Councillor Bob Mugford. We are just finalising the recommendations from that hearing, and hopefully have that reported back to council very soon. If there's any questions. Thank you.
If there's any questions, happy to take them. My only thought was number 3 and the recommendation, I don't know that we need to endorse prior to a decision. Whoever the hearing panel, whatever the hearing panel determines, it'll be brought back here for consideration once that that decision and hearing has been reached. So unless there's a reason to have 3 there now, which is proactively endorsing something yet to come, maybe we just move 1 and 2 today, and knowing that the process will bring that back for council ratification later. David, happy for you to pipe up on the process there, or Daniel around that process, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I concur with that advice, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Deborah.
Hang on. Thank you. If you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Daniel, just a query about some of the water races, about the controversy over whether they remain as open waterway pathways or they are filled in.
That's a bit too hard for me to hear. I don't know if anyone else is getting that. Deborah, do you want to write that as a question in the chat, and we'll see if we can answer it, or if it's not necessary to be answered today before we move 1 and 2, have a conversation with Daniel following the meeting, which if you let us know, we'll wait for you to write it, or we take it offline.
Oh, that's okay, Sam.
Okay, and I'm guessing that Mugford and Hassan are both happy to be the people on this panel. Great. Any further questions of the report? Mover and the seconder then. Jenny and Jeff. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Oh, sorry, hand before I vote. Murray, you check your hand up.
Yeah, the joys of Zoom, Sam. I was trying to move it.
Oh, sorry. Did you have any other things you'd like to say, Murray?
No, more than happy with the process, Sam. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. It's moved and seconded then. All those in favour, please raise your hands. And anyone against, speak up now. Declare it carried. Thank you for that. And just note, staff, thank you for working with our public forum today. Sorry that it hasn't worked out or connected. There was a test run this morning to make sure that it would, and everything worked well then. So hopefully we can get that issue sorted, and Heather will be offered the opportunity to present at the next council meeting, and we'll try and iron out those issues. The next item is tab 14, and it's water services update. And Murray and Elaine are online and will be talking us through this report. And Murray, if you weren't planning on it, it would be good to throw in an update on Springfield, because there will be a number of questions that I suppose we've got in that Springfield space. So just thinking about that ahead of time. Thank you.
No, not a problem. Happy to do that, Sam. Would you like me to share my screen for the report, or should I just speak to it?
Either or, you can share it if you'd like, if you think it's going to add value.
Well, we can give it a go. And I'll let you tell me if it's going to add value. So that should be up now. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. This is our regular monthly Five Waters report. This one's a wee bit different. We've got a number of recommendations for council to consider. The first is just to receive the report. The second is to delegate to the chief executive to make a staff submission on Taumata Arawai's technical papers, which we'll talk about a bit later on. C is to request that the chief executive prepare a submission on the national environmental standards for source of human drinking water. And lastly is to adopt the terms of reference for the district land drainage committee. So I'll leave you to come back to that at the end, Sam. The first item, if I scroll through now, is Taumata Arawai. So they have developed a number of technical documents. There's 7 of those, in fact, and they're due for submissions to be closing on the 28th of March. So out of the 7, some interesting ones: drinking water standards, so nothing too small. These are significant documents that affect council. Things about aesthetics values, environmental performance measures. These are all really detailed technical documents, and as I mentioned, the recommendation is that council staff just make a technical submission on those. The next item is proposed changes to the NES drinking water. So the government's proposing changes to the national environmental standards for source of human drinking water, and there's 3 proposals that form that. Proposal 1 is a methodology for mapping source water risk management areas. Proposal 2 looks at how these activities that pose risks to source water are regulated. And the third proposal is to expand the scope of the NES drinking water to cover the same supplies as the Water Services Act. So it's not just council supplies, but also those publicly run supplies as well. So there's a lot of change going on, and this is sort of a representation of that. Over the page, fluoridation. Council has received a request from the Director of Health, Dr. Ashley Boomfield, regarding fluoridation, and the correspondence has sort of 3 main parts. The first part is that he's suggesting that council start fluoridation related proprietary work now. The letter also sought information from councils. This information included things like how many supplies do we have, how many are currently fluoridated, what budgets do we have to provide fluoridation, and if we were to do that, how long would it take to get that fluoridation up and running? It's also noted that the Director General of Health may in some future time direct councils to fluoridate their supplies. I'll just mention that we don't have budget to fluoridate council supplies. We have no plans of doing that, and so this would be additional funding required should we have that directive made. The Director General also mentioned that he is aware of the reforms that are occurring, and it may be something that's deferred until the new entities have developed. In terms of the 3 waters reform, the Working Group on Representation, Governance and Accountability are due to report back in February this year, or late February this year, and this will allow amendments as necessary to the draft Water Entities Bill. The brief for the Working Group is to take a fresh look at critical elements of the entity design. The DIA has also issued their Transition Unit Work Programme. There's a link to that below, and it's also in the attachments, a copy of that programme. I'll now pass over to Elaine just to talk us through the water demand management.
Thanks, Murray. So in conjunction with the media communications and customer team, we've been undertaking an educational messaging campaign since the start of November. This summer has definitely had its fair share of rain, so demand on the system has been less than previous years, but the groundwater levels have been showing a downward trend, and that's shown in the appendices attached to this report. So we'll report again on that in next month.
Awesome, thank you. So next item is Te Kamati Waihora District Land Drainage and Waterways Committee. They've met a number of times. At the last committee, they made a recommendation to amend the draft terms of reference and bring those back to council. So those draft recommendations are in Appendix 5, and hopefully council will be in a position to ratify those later on in the meeting. I'll pass back to Elaine for the stimulus funding and the Pines operational health check.
So the stimulus funding, since this report was written, the length of pipe in the ground has increased to over 15.5 kilometres, which is approaching 60% laid. Procurement of the equipment for both the Darfield and the Curwee pump stations is in progress. Moving on to the Pines operational health check. So staff have now received a draft copy of the report and hope to have completed going through this in the coming month before we report back to council. Thanks, Murray.
Okay, and then I suppose, Sam, just to address the additional matter in terms of Springfield water supply. Springfield water supply is currently under precautionary boil water notice. What that means is that contamination has not been detected in the network. However, parameters of the water going through the treatment system are such that we can't guarantee the water is safe to drink, so it's a precautionary measure. This event has proven helpful. However, we have got a trial membrane plant operating at the site with additional of coagulation, and this is the first time we've been able to test the effectiveness or efficiency of the coagulation through the treatment plant, and we're pleased to report that it's working exceedingly well, and it looks to be the solution, if you like, for Springfield water issues into the future. Cost of the treatment plant is being worked through at the moment, and we're talking to suppliers about how fast we can get those products organised and on site, and the budget for that will be brought back to council as part of the annual plan consideration process. But we are looking in the order of $2 to $4 million. The original budget was $4 million, but we have been doing a number of upgrades over the years, and they will still be in use and will help bring those costs down. So we're looking around about the $2 million mark to see that through. I'll pass back to you, Sam.
Great, thank you, Murray. Thanks, Elaine, for that report. Also, just to add for information, next Wednesday, when we're thinking about Three Waters, we have invited Mayor Dan Gordon to present to a council briefing around the work that's going on with his group, and we have invited Tim Cadogan, Neil Holdham and Gabriel Huria, who are on the governance working group that the government has pulled together. Mayor of Central Otago, the Mayor of New Plymouth, and Gabriel Huria is the Ngāi Tahu representative on that group as well. So we've set aside an hour and a half for that discussion next week to update on Three Waters matters. And first question from me, Murray, is around Springfield. You sort of said the final solution. It sort of feels like we're still tiptoeing around a terrible supply, which is a river that floods and provides inconsistent and many times undesirable water into a potable supply. So alongside thinking about what this current solution might be, how's the work progressing to find an alternative and think about actually having clean water entering the system at the beginning rather than having to clean up dirty water?
Yeah, a number of options we looked at. One was to pipe water from Darfield up to Springfield. There's quite an elevation change there, and so there's obviously pumping costs, etc., to do that. We looked at additional groundwater supplies in the area. You'd hope that a place called Springfield would have abundance of spring-like water, but that hasn't been the case. So Aqualink has done some work in that regard. In terms of the membrane, when the water goes through that with the coagulation, it does come out through our trial process as water that you would hope would be fit for, or as you would expect to be and fit for purpose. So although the water source is still not the greatest, the treatment process removes all that sediment and, more importantly, that colour that's affecting our treatment processes.
So the community of Springfield, once this is put in, can expect water to the same standard that the rest of our district receives all of the time.
Yep.
No more boil water notices.
Our expectation is that everybody in the Selwyn district will have clean potable water to their expectations. That's right.
Great, thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you. I support the recommendations in front of us. I had a question around fluoridation, where it says, talks about areas with poor oral health comes. Do we know what the status of our oral health, particularly of our children, are? I presume it is something we can find out from the District Health Board, because that would be helpful information to know. There are other ways around fluoridation to promote that doesn't involve mass treatment of our water. As a parent on a private water supply, we gave our son fluoro tablets. Now, the second question I had was, they're seeking feedback on drinking water aesthetic values. I'm a little bit, what's the aesthetic value of water? That it doesn't smell of chlorine, that it doesn't have unnecessary additives? Murray, can you perhaps at some point educate me and others on what the aesthetic value of water is that they're actually talking about?
Yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're putting down there. Yeah.
And I'm just also very happy with the Drainage Committee stuff, and very pleased to see the water levels in the agenda, because that's important information for our community. When we go out there and say, we need you to constrain your water use, it helps us to explain to them that there's not an infinite supply sitting on the ground that we can just keep pumping ad infinitum. So it's very helpful information, and thank you.
No, it's fine, thank you. In terms of fluoridation, I'm not aware of the oral health in our townships and how they relate to fluoridation. I suspect that will be used as a prioritisation tool as opposed to a binary unique fluoridation or not. I suspect it will be those with the worst oral health will be first up, and then it will work through in a progressive manner. Some of those aesthetic values would be things like hardness. There are some sort of taste type things, and I do pick up your point regarding chlorination. There are some levels in terms of maximum allowable levels of chlorination, which affect some of those aesthetic values, but probably not quite to the levels that we're talking about.
Murray, I think one of the complicating factors is that, well, it's the trouble with the conversation is fluoridation and chlorination rhyme, and the two conversations can get there can be some crossover for people. So thinking about how we have a conversation about fluoride needs some thought. And I wonder whether I think we do have a responsibility to think about the well-being of our community and the health outcomes and the dental health outcomes of those living in Selwyn. And I'd expect us to be able to know what that information is and what are the health outcomes in Selwyn District compared to the New Zealand standard or whoever we want to measure ourselves against. Because if our dental outcomes are good, then fine. But if they're actually down, then I think that adds something else to the conversation that I think needs further consideration by us, rather than just waiting to be told what the Director General of Health would like us to implement. So I'd request that our staff undertook some of that work and enabled us to make an informed decision for the health of Selwyn residents. And not that that's going to lead necessarily to a decision, but I think that's information that we currently don't have and would be helpful.
Yep, no, we're happy to look into that, Sam, and if we can find the information, we'll report it back.
Thank you. David.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just for the information of the meeting, Melbourne Community Board has its first monthly community clinic next Monday afternoon, and that clinic is going to be held in Springfield at 2:30 in the afternoon. We have had conversation between ourselves and the local community committee, and they clearly know that we're going to be bringing staff to talk about the water-related issues and try and advance that conversation. So 2:30 next Monday.
Thank you, David. Bob.
Yeah, re Springfield, I agree with what the mayors had to say, but there's just one question. Is there any chance that the program that you've got for Springfield could be brought forward? Because it is a major problem over there, and it has been for quite a while. The other thing is I had my own water here tested at Christmas time, and because there's people talking about no chlorine in our system. But anyway, the reading I got back was 0.17. So that was interesting to say that there definitely is chlorine in the water when people were starting to believe there wasn't. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point about the chlorine first. If you do chlorine well, then often the taste is not as dramatic or as offensive as what you would imagine. 0.17 is from your tap, I assume, and we aim to have, so we aim to have 0.2 at the boundary, so that's reading perfectly as we'd expect it to be. In terms of Springfield, it is all about the acquiring of the materials and the transit time for those. So yeah, if council wants to fast track, that's something we can talk about in the future.
Thanks, Bob. Grant.
Murray, just want to pause for a moment, and we have discussed in the past when we talked about chlorination, all these things about, is it time to consider a network approach rather than having individual treatment stations all dotted all across Selwyn? Have you put further consideration to this rather than sort of taking a piecemeal approach to each individual case as it rears its head up? Have we got a larger strategic plan at play here where we're thinking, well, actually, maybe it's time to look at a network approach where we do network these supplies? Is that part of your thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. So we have amalgamated a number of schemes over the years, and we're currently working on a blueprint which will look at accelerating that networking of suppliers, as you mentioned. Yep. So there's a couple of processes. One is how we can easily join up supplies, and the second part of that is where is the best water in our district to supply those water treatment plants. So that works.
In discussion today. Sorry, Murray.
I was going to say that works probably will be undertaken over the next, well, it's already started, but it'll probably be over the next 3 months we come to some sort of conclusion and bring that back to council.
So the infrastructure we're building won't be stranded. It could be potentially part of this future network.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the ideas at one stage was to pipe water from Darfield up to Springfield, but with this treatment plant, it may be that we actually pipe water from Springfield down to like the likes of Sheffield and the top part of Darfield. So yeah, definitely.
Tomato why I think we probably really need to tell our ratepayers in the most clear fashion possible that chlorination and fluoridation are clearly on the horizon. Our ratepayers have clearly signalled to us they do not want chlorination in a large portion. There are portions that do want, but a large portion do not. That decision is highly likely to be taken out of our hands, and I think we need to be really transparent about this is the future possibly coming, and you note that in Prebbleton where you're explicitly providing for chlorination, and we have done in all our new builds, I think, since we've had the Audit and Risk Committee decided to take a risk-based approach. But I think, we do need to be broadcasting that more widely and letting our community know that decision is likely to be coming not from us. The same with fluoridation, it's now a health ministry decision, not a CDHB decision. So they've taken that decision-making process away from us. I still want to register my disappointment with Three Waters. I'm pleased that Dan Gordon's coming to speak to us. I am particularly disappointed where we as a council are, and I don't think that we have really made a strategic decision and let our ratepayers know where we stand. I've articulated that before, but I want to do so in a public forum. I still feel we've got a way to go before we're in a position to clearly articulate our position to our ratepayers, particularly around the anomalies in the data that's come out of the Water Industry Commission of Scotland, which has been used as the backbone to drive this decision through. And I feel that we're being very passive, and that's certainly my view. So, Sam, I'm looking forward to next week, and I'll discuss it further then. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Grant. Sophie.
Sorry, I had to find my mouse there. Murray, the drop-in session that's during the Malvern Community Board event. I've seen that that's been advertised at least on the Springfield social media and everything, but it finishes at 5, and I was just wondering, is there any communications being made available to people who are going to be at work or out of town during the period of the drop-in, because it seems that the communications is probably failing most of them at the moment, and there's only a few people who will be able to make that drop-in. So it'd be good to know what's going to cover the rest of the population of Duffield.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in and answer that, we're meeting with the chair of the community board tomorrow, Sophie. So this is part of the regular clinics, and we're going to be considering how we get that wider message out during that conversation, not only on the day, but as the follow-up to the meeting.
Thank you.
So I'll pass back to you, Sam, with the recommendations.
Thank you. Grant, your hand's still up. Is that?
I just wanted to maybe Murray England was in a position to answer the question I raised earlier on page 85 of the Willfield consent, or does he want to refer back to his notes perhaps and come back to us at another time? But is the consent currently being upgraded from the 47,000 PE that was stated in that document?
So I'm happy to answer that now. So I wasn't the technical expert on that plan change. I've got a conflict of interest because I live in West Mountain itself, but I can answer that question. Our resource consent that we have, Environment Canterbury, has no reference to population equivalence. It talks about a loading rate and a concentration of nitrate. And so based on those factors in our actual consent, we have ability to discharge up to 120,000 PE on our land, or 100,000 if one of our centre pivots is offline. Where that number refers to was in the original application, that number was referenced, and I think that was why Environment Canterbury mentioned that. But since we have made the application, which was I wasn't involved in, but our treatment processes are far more efficient, and the amount of nitrate we discharge is a lot less, and so because of that, we can actually extend that population away a lot further than predicted. So that number comes from the consent application, but it's not referenced in the actual consent that was granted.
Thanks, Murray. It's an excellent answer. Thank you.
Did we have a mover and seconder for this? I don't think we did. So for the water report, 2 people. Malcolm, first hand. Bob, second hand. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Great. And anyone against, please speak up now. Declare it carried. Thank you, Elaine and Murray, for that. The next item is the register of signed documents, and they sit there, mover and seconder for those. Malcolm, thank you. Deborah, any comments or questions on those? All those in favour, please raise your hands. And against, declare it carried. Nice use of your button there, Murray. I noticed that, up and down, very efficient. That brings us to the end of the public portion of our meeting. So thank you very much for those that have joined us today. As I said earlier, Heather will get you back online to our next meeting, so that hasn't worked out today. Councillors will adjourn the meeting until 2:45, and it'll give us 20 minutes to grab a coffee or something and or a cold drink, and see you back at 2:45 in PX. Maybe we'll just move into PX now. If mover and seconder could do that for us, Malcolm and Jenny. That we move into PX. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Anyone against, declare it carried. Great. See you soon.
No question.